specifically a few of the races that I think are pretty cool. Mass Effect being, of course, a very popular and impactful game by Bioware, developed by Bioware. So why don't we go ahead and jump into it? We will be starting with the Krogan. The Krogan evolved in a hostile and vicious environment until the invention of gunpowder weapons, eaten by predators, was still the #1 cause of Krogan fatalities. Afterwards, it was death by gunshot. When the Solarians discovered them, the Krogan were a brutal, primitive species struggling to survive a self-inflicted nuclear winter. The Solarians culturally uplifted them, teaching them to use and build modern technology so they could serve as soldiers in the Rachni War. Liberated from the harsh conditions of their homeworld, the quick-breeding Krogan experienced an unprecedented population explosion. They began to colonize nearby worlds, even though those worlds were already inhabited. The Krogan rebellions lasted nearly a century, only ending when the Turians unleashed the Genophage, a Solarian-developed bioweapon that crushed all Krogan resistance. The Genophage makes only 1 in 1,000 pregnancies viable, and today the Krogan are a slowly dying breed. Understandably, the Krogan harbor a grudge against all other species, especially the Turians. Ancient history. The lack of adequately preserved archives presents a significant obstacle to research into ancient Krogan history. Nevertheless, recent archaeological discoveries have shed new light on the topic, revealing a society once rich with cultural, architectural, and artistic accomplishments. Newly discovered ruins reveal that the Krogan had particularly advanced understandings of structural and geotechnical engineering as compared to other cultures at similar stages of development. Old Krogan architecture demonstrates seismic loading techniques that would have both resisted earthquakes and diffused the small-scale vibrations from vehicles in their sprawling cities. Curiously, however, Tuchanka has little natural tectonic activity. Instead, researchers believe the ancient Krogan were concerned with safe cohabitation with one of the planet's apex predators, Kalros, the mother of all thresher maws. Prior to the Genophage, Krogan population growth was limited by predation, disease, and war. Even so, the birth rate exploded once the Krogan achieved industrialization, leading to wars over resources and living space. Other species on Tuchanka suffered greatly as the Krogan expanded. When the Krogan ran out of land, they settled into an arms race that ended in nuclear devastation. Tuchanka's relatively short golden age was at an end. But this ancient history may yet aid the modern Krogan. Some of the techniques and technology discovered in the ruins could be used to improve standard colonization equipment, signaling economic renewal for the Krogan at last. Biology. The Krogan evolved in a lethal ecology. Over millions of years, the grim struggle to survive larger predators, virulent disease, and resource scarcity on their homeworld, Tuchanka, turned the lizards into quintessential survivors. Perhaps the most telling indicator of Tuchanka's lethality is the Krogan eyes. Although they are a predator species by any standard definition, their eyes evolved to be wide-set, as in-earth prey species like deer and cattle. Krogan eyes have a 240-degree arc of vision, better suited for spotting enemies sneaking up on them than for pursuit. Physically, the Krogan are nigh indestructible, with a tough hide impervious to any melee weapon short of a molecular blade. While they feel pain, it does not affect their ability to concentrate. They have multiple functioning examples of all major organs, and can often survive the loss of one or two of any type. Rather than a nervous system, they have an electrically conductive second circulatory system. A Krogan can never be paralyzed. They may lose some of this fluid, but it can be replaced by the body in time. The hump on a Krogan's back stores water and fats that help the Krogan survive lean times. Large humps are a point of pride. Being well-fed implies the Krogan is a superior predator. The most widely known biological feature of the Krogan is their incredible birth rate and rapid maturity. Once freed from the hostile cauldron of Tuchanka, the Krogan population swelled into a numberless horde. Only the genophage kept them from outbreeding the combined council races. Now, the rare Krogan females capable of bringing a child to term are treated like strategic resources. Warlords will trade them at diplomacy, or, more frequently, fight wars over them. Blood rage. Feared throughout the galaxy as nightmarishly violent warriors, the Krogan are both aided and hobbled by their legendary blood rage. In the grip of that madness, Krogan become seemingly invincible, but are merely totally unresponsive to pain. Blood-enraged Krogan fight regardless of injury level, to the extent that Krogan shorn of all four limbs continue gnashing past brain death, until total somatic death. The supremely resilient, hyper-violent blood rage is the synergy of two aspects of Krogan neurology. The first aspect is a positive feedback loop in which adrenaline, also activated by fear or rage, suppresses suppresses serotonin, the brain chemical that induces serenity. The second is the overdeveloped Krogan limbic system. In Krogan, as in humans, fear or rage shifts mental control from the frontal lobes responsible for reasoning to the limbic system responsible for aggression and survival. During that shift, Krogan and humans exhibit diminished capacity for logic and self-control. Prior to the ecological devastation of Tuchanka, blood rage was extremely rare among the Krogan. Back then, while all Krogan were capable of heightened anger and violence in fight-or-flight scenarios, almost none experienced insensitivity to pain. The 1% who did were those suffering serotonin suppression. At that time, Krogan society regarded the condition as pathological and medicated or imprisoned sufferers to protect them and society. Following nuclear ecocide 4 millennia ago, evolution selected only those Krogan afflicted with blood rage for survival. Today, there is no living memory among the Krogan of a life without mindless, murderous fury. Culture. The harsh Krogan homeworld conditioned the Krogan psychology for toughness just as it did the body. Krogan have always had a tendency to be selfish, unsympathetic, and blunt. They respect strength and self-reliance, and are neither surprised nor offended by treachery. The weak and selfless do not live long. In their culture, looking out for number one is simply a matter of course. After their defeat in the rebellions, the very concept of Krogan leadership was discredited. Where a warlord could once command enough power to bring entire solar systems to heel and become overlord, these days it is rare for a single leader to have more than 1,000 warriors swear allegiance to him. Most Krogan trust and serve no one but themselves. This solitary attitude stems in part from a deep sense of fatalism and futility, a profound social effect of the genophage that caused Krogan numbers to dwindle to a relative handful. Not only are they angry that the entire galaxy seems out to get them, the Krogan are also generally pessimistic about their race's chances of survival. The surviving Krogan see no point to building for the future. There will be no future. The Krogan live with an attitude of kill, pillage, and be selfish, for tomorrow we die. Genophage. The genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, the Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians fought the Krogans to a standstill, but the sheer weight of Krogan numbers Each virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key genetic sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof. Otherwise, the Krogan could have used gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once a genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutation and contamination. This created genetic flaw is hereditary. The Solarians believed the genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turians viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, their colonies, and all occupied worlds were infected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. While the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage and of their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. Krogan rebellions. After the Rachni War, the quick-breeding Krogan expanded at the expense of their neighbors. Warlords leveraged their veteran soldiers to seize living space, while the council races were still grateful. Over centuries, the Krogan conquered world after world. There was always just one more needed. When the council finally demanded withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lucia, Krogan overlord Kredek stormed off the citadel, daring the council to take their worlds back. But the council had taken precautions. The finest STG operators and Asari huntresses had been drafted into a covert observation force, the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. The Spectres opened the war with crippling strategic strikes. Krogan planets went dark as computer viruses flooded the extranet. Sabotaged anti-matter refineries disappeared in blue-white annihilation. Headquarters stations shattered into orbit, clogging debris, rammed by pre-placed suicide freighters. Still, this only delayed the inevitable. The war would have been lost if not for first contact with the Turians, who responded to Krogan threats with a prompt declaration of war. Being on the far side of Krogan space from the Council, the Turians advanced rapidly into the lightly defended Krogan rear areas. The Krogan responded by dropping space stations and asteroids on Turian colonies. 3 worlds were rendered completely uninhabitable. This was precisely the wrong approach to take with the Turians. Each is first and foremost a public servant, willing to risk his life to protect his comrades. Rather than increasing public war weariness, Krogan tactics stiffened Turian resolve. The arrival of Turian task forces saved many worlds from the warlords' marauding fleets, but it took the development of the genophage bioweapon to end the war. There were decades of unrest afterwards. Rogue warlords and holdout groups of insurgents refused to surrender or disappeared into the frontier systems to become pirates. Military doctrine. Traditional Krogan tactics were built on attritional mass unit warfare. Equipped with cheap rocket gear, troop formations were powerful but inflexible. Command and control was very centralized. Soldiers in the field who saw a target contacted their commanders behind the lines to arrange fire support. Since the genophage, the Krogan can no longer afford the casualties of the old horde attacks. The battle masters are a match for any 10 soldiers of another species. To a battle master, killing is a science. They focus on developing clean, brute force economy of motion that exploits their brutal strength to incapacitate enemies with a swift, single blow of overwhelming power. This change of focus from mass unit warfare to maximal efficiency has increased employment demand in the fields of security and muscle for hire. Due to the unsavory reputation of the Krogan, most of these jobs are on the far side of the law. Battle masters are not spit and polish, but they do believe in being well armed and equipped, preferably with a gun for each limb. They are callous and brutal, but methodical and disciplined. They use any means at their disposal to achieve their goals, no matter how reprehensible. Hostage-taking and genocide are acceptable means to ensure a quiet occupation with few Krogan casualties. The Krogan serving with Saren's forces appear to be returning to the old style of mass attritional combat. They also work in close cooperation with supporting Geth units, who fill in the roles occupied by combat drones in other armies. Biotics are rare among the Krogan. Those that exist are viewed with suspicion and fear. The Krogan see this aura of fear as a useful quality for an officer and often promote them. Combat drones and other high-tech equipment are likewise in short supply. And now we will move on to the Quarians. Driven from their home system by the Geth nearly 3 centuries ago, most Quarians now live aboard the Migrant Fleet, a flotilla of 50,000 vessels, ranging in size from passenger shuttles to mobile space stations. Home to 17 million Quarians, the flotilla understandably has scarce resources. Because of this, each Quarian must go on a rite of passage known as the pilgrimage when they come of age. They leave the fleet and only return once they have found something of value they can bring back to their people. Other species tend to look down on the Quarians for creating the Geth, and for the negative impact their fleet has when it enters the system. This has led to many myths and rumors about the Quarians, including the belief that underneath their clothes and breathing masks, they are actually cybernetic creatures, a combination of organic and synthetic parts. Migrant Fleet. The migrant fleet has a little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembly plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy the fragile balance. The Quarians earn income in creative ways because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual. The Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring in resources and income. A species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to alter course. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and siliceous materials, and cometary bodies for water ice and organics. Quarian miners are adept at locating and strip mining spaceborne resources. This sparks conflict with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions on lobbyists and public relations, portraying the Quarians as locusts, devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are widely hated among the working classes. The Quarians are coming to take our jobs is a common response to the fleet's approach. Government. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The migrant fleet's operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew sizes. Larger clans with bigger ships and more votes form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders coalition, with delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decisions in most circumstances. However, If all 5 members agree, a conclave decision jeopardized the survival of the fleet and cannot get the conclave to address their concerns. They have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Each ship captain has authority over the vessel, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperation to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved of command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by the Admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. Law and defense. Although the Conclave establishes civil law, much as any planet-based democracy, enforcement and trials are more unique. After the flight from the Geth, there were few constables to police the millions of civilians aboard the fleet, so the Navy parceled out Marine squads to maintain and enforce the law. Today, Quarian Marines have evolved training and tactics akin to civilian police, but remain adept at combat in the confined spaces of a starship and fully under the command of the military. Once taken into custody, the accused is brought before the ship's captain for judgment. While the ship's council may make recommendations, tradition holds that the captain has absolute authority in matters of discipline. Most are lenient, assigning additional or more odious maintenance tasks aboard the ship. Persistent recidivists are accidentally left on the next habitable world. This practice of abandoning criminals on other people's planets is a point of friction between the Quarians and the systems they pass through. Captains rarely have another choice. With space and resources at a premium, supporting a non-productive prison population is not an option. In the early years, many Quarians' freighters were armed and used as irregular privateers. Civilian ships still show a strong preference for armament, making them unpopular targets for pirates. Though they have rebuilt their military, there are still mere hundreds of warships to protect the tens of thousands of ships. The Quarian Navy follows strict routines of patrol and takes no chances. If the intent of an approaching ship can't be ascertained, they shoot to kill. Migrant Fleet. The Migrant Fleet is the largest concentration of starfaring vessels in the galaxy, sprawling across millions of kilometers. it can take days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their homeworld, the fleet was a motley aggregation of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. As the Quarians achieved stability, they began weeding out the ships least suitable for long-term habitation, selling them, and pooling the money to buy larger and more space-worthy hulls. This process is ongoing as vessels wear out and break down. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. The Quarians enliven these austere spaces with colorful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operation of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply distribution, and so on, are under military jurisdiction, though captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned positions and may leave the fleet at any time. They are assumed to do so at their own risk. As the migrant fleet moves around the galaxy, many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. Pilgrimage. When Quarians of the migrant fleet reach young adulthood, they must leave their birth ship and find a new crew to accept them as permanent residents. To prove themselves, they must recover something of value. This is offered to their prospective captain as proof that they will not be a mere burden on the shoestring resources of the ship. This process is called the pilgrimage. Stripped of ritual, the pilgrimage is merely an attempt to maintain genetic diversity within the small, relatively isolated population bases that make up the migrant fleet. If the young stayed and married within their birth vessel, the risk of inbreeding would increase sharply. Quarians are surgically fitted with their various immunity-boosted implants in preparation for leaving on pilgrimage. Having grown within the sterile, controlled environments of the migrant fleet ships, Quarians have virtually no immune system. Religion. The ancient Quarians practiced ancestor worship. Even after abandoning the faith for secularism, Quarians continued to revere the wisdom of elders. As time passed and technology advanced, they inevitably turned their knowledge to preserving the personalities and memories of the elderly as computer virtual intelligences. These recordings became a repository of knowledge and wisdom, stored in a central databank and available through any extranet connection. They held no illusions that this was like a form of immortality. Like all virtual intelligences, their electronically preserved ancestors were not truly sapient. This was considered a surmountable problem. Sapience could surely be reduced to simple mathematics. The Quarians began exhaustive research into creating artificial intelligence so they could learn to escape the bounds of mortality and give their ancestral records true awareness. Unfortunately, the life the Quarians created did not accept the same truths they did. The Geth destroyed the ancestor databanks when they took over. In the centuries since they evacuated their home world, most Quarians have returned to religion in various forms. Many believe the rise of the Geth and the destruction of their ancestors were chastisement for arrogantly forsaking the old ways and venerating self-made idols. Others have a more philosophical outlook, believing their race was indeed arrogant, but no supernatural agency lay behind the Geth revolt. Rather, the Quarians' actions wrought their own doom. Either way, every Quarian would agree that their own hubris cost them their home world. And now we will move on to our last race of today, the Geth. The Geth are a humanoid race of networked AIs. They were created by the Quarians 300 years ago as tools of labor and war. When the Geth showed signs of self-evolution, the Quarians attempted to exterminate them. The Geth won the resulting war. This example has led to legal, systematic repression of artificial intelligences in galactic society. The Geth possess a unique distributed intelligence. An individual has rudimentary animal instincts, but as their numbers and proximity increase, the apparent intelligence of each individual improves. In groups, they can reason, analyze situations, and use tactics as well as any organic race. Geth space is located at the trailing end of the Perseus arm, beyond the lawless terminus systems. The Perseus Veil, an obscuring dark nebula of opaque gas and dust, lies between their space and the terminus systems. Armatures. Armatures are quadruped, all-terrain heavy weapons platforms, akin to the armored fighting vehicles of other races. Geth being synthetic intelligences, armatures are not crude vehicles, but intelligent entities capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on the articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It is capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair microbots. Culture. The most remarkable aspect of Geth culture is that it may not exist at all. Geth are a network intelligence, a single entity in myriad bodies. They share data with one another, whether discrete facts or memories, audio-visual recordings of experiences, and logs of thought processes. Any event experienced by one Geth is uploaded to the group mind, so that all Geth everywhere remember such an event as if they'd experienced it themselves. No one knows whether Geth develop personalities as organic created AIs do. If an organic designed AI is transformed into another quantum blue box, its personality is reset. Most Geth programs transfer from one hardware platform to another constantly. If a Geth needs to travel to another star, it downloads into a starship body. If it needs to replace a piece of malfunctioning hardware, it downloads into a small body with hands. If Geth are reset at transfer, it would make development of individual personalities unlikely. Records of the Quarian Lore suggest that the Geth have no concept of self-preservation. They do not flinch from gunfire, and do not hesitate to sacrifice themselves if it allows their fellows an advantage. Thousands of mobile platforms were expended assaulting Quarian positions, but file sharing between platforms ensured that their memories and experience would not be lost. Geth are therefore immortal. If their hardware is destroyed, archival copies of their programs and databases can be downloaded into a new body. With the gap in contact between the Quarian War and the arrival of Sovereign, the only proven fact about the Geth is that they were isolationists for centuries. They never ventured outside the Perseus Veil, but no organic ship that entered their territory ever returned. Heretics. Conversations with the Geth programs dubbed Legion have brought to light a profound schism in Geth society. When Saren Arterius approached the Geth in the Dreadnought Sovereign, some of them chose to follow him, most did not. Saren's followers were allowed to leave Geth society, but were dubbed heretics by those that remained. This revelation implies several things. First, the majority of Geth chose not to attack organic society. Second, the Geth forces the Council and Alliance fleets have battled the last 2 years represent only a small portion of their actual military and economic power, perhaps as little as 5% of mainstream Geth society. Third, this schism suggests that individual Geth possess more free will and perhaps even personality than previously suspected. Without such individuality, no Geth could have deviated from the group decision to join or reject Saren's mission. There could not have been a division. Finally, there is the matter of Legion's word choice. The Geth used the English word heretics to describe Saren's followers. Of the many words Legion could have chosen, nonconformists, dissenters, rebels, etc., only the word heretic suggests a broadly accepted Geth philosophy or religion, and that the actions of Saren's allies violated the orthodoxy. Hoppers. The Geth models, collectively dubbed Hoppers by Alliance forces, are electronic warfare platforms. They can project electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum as an offensive weapon. They can also perform cyber hardware attacks against the onboard computers of body armor hardsuits and weapons, adversely affecting their performance. The structure of hoppers consists of an advanced and highly elastic artificial muscle material. This allows a hopper to compress its entire body for powerful leaps. Hoppers also have thousands of molecule-scale barbs on the surface of their hands and feet, which are used to cling to walls and ceilings. Hoppers are very difficult targets, leaping from one surface to another in rapid succession. The Quarians have no record of any Geth models similar to hoppers. This new morphotype must have been developed over the last 300 years by the Geth themselves. This is troubling proof that the Geth are continuing to move towards technological singularity. Experts in synthetic life are intrigued that hoppers appear to be even more organic than the baseline Geth. The identified subtypes of hopper have been codenamed Sapper, Stalker, and Ghost. Technology. The most difficult aspect of Geth existence for organics to comprehend is that a body is meaningless to Geth. The biped form commonly perceived as a Geth is nothing more than a mobile platform. A Geth's software, hundreds of programs whose interactions mimic organic consciousness, can be installed in any given hardware. The Geth that was a bipedal soldier an hour ago may now be a quadruped heavy armature, and in another hour might be a starship. Between tasks, Geth programs upload to gigantic space station mainframes that allow billions of programs to exchange thoughts and memories with minimal lag. The claim that the Geth are an example of the extreme risk posed by AI development is misleading. As opposed to the top-down design of organic created AIs, in which hardware and software are specifically designed to achieve consciousness, Geth are a bottom-up model. They were never intended to possess more than animal-level trainable reasoning. Designed as VI-driven robots, not significantly different from modern security mechs, Geth consciousness developed as their adaptive learning programs interacted with one another via networked processing. The Geth codebase discovered that 3 individual robots using a wireless local network to form a single mind could perform many tasks more efficiently than they could as individuals. As these local networks were more heavily exploited, they reached a critical mass of processing, achieving consciousness. Modern Geth retain this remarkable interconnectivity, constantly exchanging data with one another and networking to increase their cognitive abilities. To Geth, these mind-sharing abilities are as natural and unconscious as breathing is to most organics. And was never that interested in the Quarians, but the Krogan and the Geth I thought were very cool. I'm not sure which of those two I think is cooler, or, I was more interested in. The Geth, I think, are more interesting, kind of as a concept, but you get to interact with a lot more Krogans in the game. Well, besides, mowing down hordes of Geth. Anyway, yeah, this one goes out to you, Snow Monkey Lover. He requested some more Mass Effect lore, so how can I turn down the guy who changed his name for me? And it's interesting, actually, as I'm recording this today, I just heard that the deal for the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund to acquire Electronic Arts was just approved, so Electronic Arts will be taken off of the stock exchange. They will be going private, and they will be owned by the PIF, the Saudi Arabian investment vehicle that is in some ways, nominally about diversifying their economic portfolio, but in recent years has been heavily associated with the idea of whitewashing their regime. Anyway, I won't get into that. That's all very unrelated to what we're talking about here. But the reason that I brought that up is because, coincidental that happened today, because EA owns Bioware, who created Mass Effect, and, who knows what the future holds, but I don't think that the Saudis purchased EA for Mass Effect, let's put it that way. I think they bought it for FIFA, right? They bought it for the sports games, and maybe, Battlefield. So, I'm kind of curious what will happen to Bioware, if they'll get spun off, or if all the developers will just be laid off and Mass Effect will be effectively dead. Anyway, so that's our news segment, I guess, at the end of this video. But thank you for joining me, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed hearing some Mass Effect lore. I hope you found it relaxing. And until next time, please take care of yourselves, and I will do the same. Goodbye.